Welcome to Solo Travel Adventures, my sisters. Don't let fear hold you back from traveling alone. I want you to gather your courage, listen to inspiring stories, and learn how to travel solo while safely navigating new places from this show. I'm Cheryl Esch, solo travel advocate and travel coach, and I want you to have a transformative experience when you travel solo. So pack your bags, book your flight, and check one more time for that passport. It's time to explore the world. Hello, sisters. Welcome back to Solo Travel Adventures. I thought I'd spend today sharing with you my story of how I came to love travel and where it all started from, and kind of give you a little bit of my travel journey so far, and maybe even give you a little glimpse of a future plan of mine for some travel. So my love for travel, I believe, began when I was about 9 years old. It was the summer of 77. Yes, you can see how old I was. My family took an epic summer vacation. We spent several weeks, I think around 5 weeks. We traveled around in an RV and we visited numerous national parks. It was an adventure for many reasons. We had many mechanical issues with the RV along the way. We just had a lot of fun as a family. Being in close quarters together with 6 people in an RV can be test your patience for sure, and certainly make living a little more challenging for sure. But I was 9, so I really didn't. It didn't bother me, and I don't have much of a reference, as far as remembering it feeling awful. It was actually, to me, it was an adventure. And after that, so that was a pretty epic trip. And I will never forget that. Neither will my family members. And my eldest sister actually kept a journal of that whole time that we were on the road. Many things from losing our brakes going down a steep, windy hill out west, to having our back window broken and having to stop and have that fixed, having our refrigerator fly open as we rounded a corner because someone didn't lock it, and the eggs spilling out all over my pillow were just a few of the memorable incidences that happened on the road. I do recall, and this is a very fond memory for me, is my mother was laughing a lot during that trip. And that's important to me because I lost my mother many, many years ago. And so a memory of this whole, her free spirit and just making things fun and going with the flow, really, they're in my heart, and I remember those very vividly. And her laughing, one particular incident where, yes, my mom could have some pretty nasty gas, and her letting some loose, and oh my gosh, it was so bad that one of us, I don't know if it was me or my sister, opened the front window and stuck our heads out, but then we lost our hat. We were wearing a hat, and so having to kind of go back, and her just laughing about this. So these are fond memories and have really cemented, I think, this whole idea of adventure for me. And we as a family, after that point, started to go to Florida, Sanibel Island in particular, quite often. And we had other family trips, and there was it was a big joke in our family. My father owned his own business, so he was often very busy, and the summers, of course, were his busiest time as a contractor. And it was always last minute. He would realize summer was over or almost over, and he hadn't planned some sort of vacation or trip with his family. And so it became a little running joke that when we got to Labor Day that Dad was scrambling to figure things out to go somewhere. Hence the last minute Niagara Falls trip that kind of turned out to be not so great we didn't make reservations or anything. So again, it was a very spontaneous, which that part I didn't mind, but we ended up being in a hotel room. Like literally we were like everybody else, we were chasing around. This is Labor Day weekend, folks. So rather busy time for travel, finishing up, everybody doing the same thing, finishing up before school started there's those last minute vacations. So we are literally driving around, hitting hotel to hotel, and everybody's like full. And you could see the same cars doing the same thing. And literally like we got to one place and really had to race in and got the last room at this one pretty rundown hotel. I should say motel, really. It was a motel. And I recall it was late, so we were all just really happy to finally have found a place and get settled. And I recall, when I slept in the bed, it was kind of caved in, and you could tell it was just not very clean. And when I woke up the next morning and pulled back the sheets, was getting ready to go take a shower, I realized I had slept with a cockroach. Whether it was dead or alive when I was sleeping, I have no idea. But it was dead in the morning and literally just about jumped out of my skin. And ever since that incident, anytime I go somewhere and I travel, even in a hotel room, I will completely pull those sheets down and check underneath before I hop into bed. But our travels were always just in the U.S. as I was growing up. And even when I was in college, I started to do a little more adventuring as a solo traveler and would just hit the road and just go places, maybe visit somebody, and always just within a few hours of driving from where I was. So I think I had this adventurous spirit since I was little. And then on top of that, as a professional dancer, I always had this dream to be in a touring dance company because I love to travel so much. And there was just this romanticized image of it in that you were, going to different cities and doing your thing on the stage, performing for people, and then moving on to the next space. And for me, I've always felt like, and the best way I can put this is that I have this gypsy spirit sort of in me, and that I like to travel, and not that I don't want to settle down and have roots. I grew up having a very strong family roots at a home that was lovely. It was beautiful. And it's not that I grew up moving a whole lot either. You often find people that have moved a lot in their life, whether they're from a military family or just from their family's job situations making them move a lot, or even their own life circumstances. I lived in the same house pretty much my whole life, almost up till I got married, just a few years before until my mother passed away. So I've never moved that much until after I got married. But you find those types of people are kind of transient. So they have never really felt like they've put roots down. Maybe they desire to, or maybe they love this sort of wandering spirit that they have, kind of going from place to place. There is something to be said for setting roots and having a home base, so to speak. But I've always loved the idea of exploring new places and moving about, and traveling light is what I've kind of learned to do as well lately, kind of reducing my materialistic possessions even over the years. So this whole idea of exploring adventures and having that gypsy kind of feel in my life, even though that idea, that dream of becoming a professional dancer in a touring company did not materialize. I still feel like I have that within me, or that idea in me. So I've carried that into now a passion of mine is travel. And then the other big event that really cemented this whole passion for travel for me was my backpacking trip to Europe. I was 23 years old. Again, spent about 5 weeks over in Europe backpacking with my best friend from college. And I love the fact that it was very spontaneous. Not the planning leading up to it, but once we got there, we really had no plans. We didn't book any places to stay except for we had a friend of mine had parents that lived in London, and we had actually set a few days to actually meet, stay with them. So those dates were set, but anything outside of those 3 days or so we were in London, we were free to just roam and, decide on a whim, hey, let's go to southern France, or let's go to, getting invited to even go to the running of the bulls, which I regret that we didn't do. But, having that, maybe that opportunity to do that presented to us was amazing. And that whole idea and seeing different cultures really opened my eyes. I loved the freedom aspect of travel. I loved being spontaneous and not being held to a calendar, so to speak, or you have an 8:00 meeting or whatever, but having that freedom. But exploring also the rich culture of Europe was just amazing, because Europe has obviously been longer established than the U.S. So the architecture is so much richer and has so much history behind it. And then the people, and just maneuvering in different cultures, different languages. I will say that was challenging. It's still challenging for me. But now I have a true appreciation, especially for those folks that know multiple languages. I am very envious of you, and wish I had been, as a child, kind of directed that path to learn some languages when I was young. So now as I'm older, it's really a struggle to learn languages. But I'm not done trying, for sure. So my love for travel has grown. Every trip I take, I see new things, meeting new people, different environments. I do love being in nature and being outside. Exploring cities by foot is preferred. And that way I can really get a sense of that city or that community. And when I travel, I do like to actually stay right kind of in the center of things, meaning I don't typically stay in hotels, although I have, but I'd rather live almost like a local. So for example, when I went to Belize in 2021, we stayed not at any of those lovely resorts that are off on some of those little islands off of Belize, but we stayed actually on the mainland, and we stayed with a local. He had an Airbnb right next to his own home, and it really provided us. He knew his history. He was a history buff, and so he also became kind of our tour guide / chauffeur. And when he drove us places, he would start to give us the history. We got to see really the true living of the Belizean people, and that's what I loved. being separated and kind of in your bubble of a resort was not the type of experience I wanted. I wanted to really see the true country and those people that really live there. We even drove out into sort of, the countryside a little bit, outside of the city, and we got to see how the people live there. And it was amazing that everybody out in the country in Belize had their own garden. These were massive gardens too, or they shared gardens. They had, shared plots of land that they shared with their neighbor, and they had sort of, in their own sense, they probably don't call it a co-op, but sort of a co-op idea, and that's how they lived. That's how they survived during that pandemic as well. So our host actually said that the pandemic didn't really affect those people so much because they already lived off the land. They lived more self-sufficient than those that lived in the city. And they were so far removed, too, from maybe even the media and the news. And they were also far away from other people. So there was already kind of a natural social distancing going on. And Belize also had a very, very low COVID reporting. They had very few people that contracted COVID. He also, our host, kind of bragged about how low their numbers were. And Belize was a great place to enjoy the culture. It was nice because there were almost no tourists when we went because this country had just opened up. So we truly were living like the locals, going to that local grocery store, coming back and cooking in our Airbnb, which had no AC, which is very typical of people that live in Belize. They don't have those commodities like we might have in the U.S. So my love for travel, as I mentioned before, has really expanded. My eyes have been open. I've noticed I have more patience, and I'm more aware of people and details. My eyes are really more wide open to my surroundings when I travel. I have a greater appreciation for what I have and what I have been blessed with, and even having that opportunity to travel is also a blessing, and having that ability to do so. Not many people can do that. But the solo idea really in the past few years has become more of a draw to me, mainly because of my life situation and the changes that have been occurring in my life. I have felt the need, as I've been unraveling for several years, maybe even close to at least 5 years or so, really getting to the heart of being more authentic with myself and kind of going back to the person that I was before I got married, and trying to rediscover who Cheryl really is and what are my passions. I felt like at that point, and even before that, I felt like I had lost the ability to dream. And so that was sort of my challenge as I was processing and going through this, peeling back the onion, to sort of find that seed of mine, that true self, that authentic self, and because a lot of what is inside of us, our passions and our values, are always there. And they may change a little bit over time, but you're always, in my opinion, going to have some of these foundational things that are very important in your life. For example, a value of mine that has never changed probably since my maybe teenage years, although I wouldn't have recognized it so much in my teenage years. It became a lot more evident in my 20s. But my faith is a pillar of my values, and that has not changed. So a lot of decisions, a lot of things that I do may be based off of what my faith is. And you may have other pillars of value that you can see drive your passions, they drive your decisions. And so that, might want to consider what those are, especially as you're going into the new year. But as I was reevaluating and coming back to that place, I started to recognize and notice that I had unfortunately compromised quite a bit of what my values and what my passions and who I truly was. Well, now that you got a sense of my past travel experiences and how it has shaped me, I want to share my future plans. Kind of exciting, and I will share as I journey along with you, because there may be some of you that are interested in this idea. I will be planning to take some time, a long-term travel trip in the fall of 2023. I will hit the road for a while, and so I'm working on getting those plans in play, and I will share with you how I have prepared for that time of being on the road for an extended period of time, how you can do the same thing if you are interested in any kind of long-term travel. So, of course, there are lots of things to consider and to prep for. So I'll be sharing those along the way on the podcast of how I have done that and how I've prepared myself and how you can do the same thing if that is a desire of yours to do some longer-term travel, meaning to me, longer-term travel is really anything past 2 weeks, because we think about just your standard vacation is usually 1 week, maybe 10 to 14 days or so, depending on where you're going. So I will share with you how to take that idea of travel and turn it into some long-term ideas for you and how you can prepare for that. But sisters, I know everybody has their own story of why they love to travel and how they have maybe morphed their travel to more solo trips and being drawn to that or having that desire to do more of that. And again, it might be like myself, you might be in a different season of your life and you really feeling that need of whether it's to be alone, just to kind of reflect, or if it's to physically restore your body, mentally restore your body. You can go back and listen to last week's episode. 2 weeks ago, I had an episode about how travel can be used for healing. And so maybe that's why you are really desiring to do some solo travel, or maybe it's just because you prefer to be alone and not have to deal with the drama of other people. And that's acceptable too, because that can be the case in some ways. Also, you might enjoy solo travel because you really want to go and none of your friends can join you. So it's just timing and you really have that desire to see that place. I encourage you to just do it. And as I say all the time, I want to encourage you women to take that leap. If you have never solo traveled, take the leap right now. Plan a trip for first quarter of 2023, maybe by summer. Maybe get there before high season, okay, if you're trying to save money. So maybe between now and the end of May, try to plan a solo trip. I don't care if it's just 3 hours away from your home. Go on that trip. Take that leap. Maybe you want to take a bigger leap and you want to go international. Take that leap. And sisters, get out there and have an adventure. I'm hoping with my shared story, it has gotten you thinking about your story, because we all have a story. We all have a life story and we all have a travel story. So I'd like you to take action today on what you heard today and seeing how you can figure out your story and your why, your starting point of how you became interested in travel and then why you love to travel. So the first step you're going to take is I want you to think back to your very first memory of a trip, a time that you traveled, whether it was with family, doesn't have to be a solo trip, and think back to what kind of feelings that evoked? What happened? Was it a good memory? Was it a maybe not so good memory? But either way, these memories, these first inklings of our travel experience do shape how we view travel and how we even in the future pursue our ideas of travel. So my example, of course, was the RV trip and how that has shaped my idea of travel in that I like to look at travel as an adventure, which is really what that was for my family when I was young. Maybe an example is your first trip or vacation with your family was maybe a camping trip, and maybe it didn't go as well. So maybe because of that, you don't care for those types of trips. Maybe you don't like being outdoors. Maybe you prefer staying in hotels or having things a little more accommodating in such that it's more like your everyday life, possibly. And then the second step I'd like you to take is we need to discover our why. And that goes for everything that we do in our life. But think about why you like to travel, why you have this desire or passion to travel. And we all know that once we figure out our why, then the whole planning of any future trips will be easier to navigate, easier to decide which way you want to go. And that may also link back to your very first travel experience or vacation that you took and how that has shaped your why. It will determine, for me, example, that whole why I travel. I like the idea of adventure. Maybe also think about when you're thinking about your why you enjoy traveling, think about the feelings that it evokes for you. And that will also determine what type of travel you will want to pursue in the future. So your why is very essential. If your why for travel is to experience cultures, or maybe it's to be ingrained and volunteer, then that's going to dictate what type of travel you plan in the future. So take some time, even get a pen and paper, and spend a few moments thinking about what is your story, what is your very first remembrance of a trip, whether it was good or bad, and then that seedling, how it has formed your idea of travel, and then your why. Think about why you enjoy traveling. And those are going to be key to helping you pursue or navigate those future trips that you want to do, because we want those to be in line with our values. So we want those to be in line with our values, folks, because if we plan a trip that is really outside of what we enjoy and what is sort of that foundation of who we are, then it's not going to be as fun. It's not going to be as enjoyable. And so we want to make sure as you look to those future travel plans that you reflect on these 2 points for yourself. And then it will be a trip to remember. I also encourage you, sisters, to join the conversation about this episode on my Facebook group. It is called Solo Travel for Women Over 50. And come join that conversation about, your why of travel and what is your first memory of it. Also, I am looking for some stories to share on future episodes, stories of solo travel. Maybe it was your first time and you can share that experience with my listeners. So if that is you, please go to the show notes and find the link for SpeakPipe, and you can record your information a little bit and the way I can get in touch with you. And I look forward to hearing these stories and being able to share them with a broader audience. So again, sisters, get out there, have an adventure. Hey, sister travelers, did this podcast inspire and encourage you or move you to get out there and travel? Wonderful. There are 3 ways you can thank me. First one is leave a written review for the show on Apple Podcast. 2, share the show with your sister travelers, your friends, your family. And 3, subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. And thank you again for listening to the show. Sisters, be fearless, take the leap, and get out there and have an adventure.